Welcome to Tawana Talks, and this month we're doing a special honoring of dads for the month of June. This episode is dedicated to my father, so get ready to laugh out loud, share some smiles, take a nostalgic trip back to the late 80s. From backyard barbecues to jam into some sweet music, we'll celebrate the incredible dads and father figures who have shaped our lives. So chill, sit back, and let's honor our dads together. Hey, and welcome back to another episode of Tawana Talks, where we celebrate, empower, and uplift each other through heartfelt conversations and a little bit of humor. I'm your host, Tawana, and today we are diving in a very special tribute to the incredible dads out there. In honor of June, where we celebrate Father's Day, I wanted to take this time to honor the fathers um, in my life and my dad. And so get ready to laugh, reminisce, and appreciate the timeless wisdom that our fathers and the fathers in our lives have brought us. So, because I literally feel like in my past life, I was a mom who told the best dad jokes. I'm going to kick it off for you with a classic dad joke. These are your jokes that get you laughing and shaking your head at the same time. So, here's one for you. What do you call a woman who burns her bills? Bernadette. You call her Bernadette. Woo. All right. I used to tell dad jokes when I was a principal. I had something called Wacky Wednesdays. And on Wacky Wednesdays is when I told my dad jokes. And the students would be like, that is so corny, but they always remembered them. So I just think that I'm a good joke teller. And if you don't feel that, don't put that in the comments. So it is what it is. But for real, I want to definitely take this moment to highlight my dad for the role that he has played in my life and shaping me into being the woman that I am and how I raise and rear my children. And so I just want to first shout out my dad. And I also want to just really honor the other dads who are significant and play a role in my life, and the life of my children. And so, shout outs to my ex husband for being the father of my children and providing them a space where they can always be their authentic self. I want to also shout out my son, who has stepped into the role himself as fatherhood and has two beautiful children as my grandbabies. And I'm just really excited about how you've taken that role by the bootstraps and how compassionate and understanding and how you've leaned into being such a great dad. And it gives me such great joy. And I'm so proud, even more proud to be your mother as I watch you be a father. I also want to give a shout out to my brothers who are phenomenal dads to their children, how they show up and show out for the children, and how they've showed up and showed out for my children. And so, thank you guys, and happy Father's Day to you all. All right. So, beyond jokes, dads have always been the source of wisdom. Like, if we think back to the days when we were watching sitcoms before social media was a thing and we were able to watch little snippets and clips, these were your weekly shows. Like, my favorite was The Cosby Show. And Cliff Huxtable on that show was a prominent father. He always spoke wisdom with a little bit of comedy and infused in it. We had Carl Winslow from Family Matters. These were the iconic 80s dads. We also had James Evans from Good Times. And they not only made us laugh, but they also taught us some important lessons as we watched them and we admired their wisdom and the essence of their fatherhood. Cliff was gentle, he had gentle humor. He had some great thoughtful advice, and he always found a way to make a complex issue really relatable, whether it was discussing the importance of education, finance, family values. Cliff wisdom had lasting impact. Remember, he was the one that reminded us, I brought you in this world and I'll take you out. Moms have a look. Like, we can look at a kid and they know, oh, I better, shape up and ship right or get it together. But dads had a sound, and that sound is what got us in check. Now, I say moms have a look. I think moms had a look. Like my mother, she was able to give me a look, and I knew, all right, I'm not about to venture there. I was able to my older children give them a look, and they knew, okay, it's time to simmer down, simmer down. But these alpha babies, like my 9-year-old, I give her a look, she give me a look right back, and I be like, what? And so I had to even like call my mom one day and was like, or not even my mom, I called my brothers, and I was like, hey, do y'all remember if mom, like if our mom had like a meeting with us to tell us like when I look at you like this, that mean it's enough? Or did I miss that meeting? Because this little one didn't get the memo. And you know, everybody thinks that's funny, but I'm like, yo, how she don't know the look? Like I've gotten a little more wiser. My patience is thinner. So she should know the look before the look get there. But anywho, dad's had a sound. And I particularly remember my mom calling my dad because I wouldn't eat my dinner. And that was funny to me that I can specifically remember that. Like I can remember where I was, what the setting and the scene was. And so this was a time where phones were connected to the wall and our kitchen table was close to the wall. Now, in hindsight, I think my mom positioned the kitchen like that so she can be sitting at the table and talking on the phone, which is a great idea. But I remember not eating my food and my mom threatening me and saying, I'm going to call your dad. And first of all, I must have been a trip because, like I said, my mom had a look, but for some reason, she wasn't utilizing her superpower look, or it just wasn't working that day. I don't really know. And I wasn't like a handful child, but I remember this particular time where I don't know what got into me and why I decided not to eat my food. But whatever the case may be, it was to pull in some reinforcements. And she was calling my dad. Now, let me give you some context. My dad worked for Chevy for years, all of my life actually, and really up into his passing. And he worked on the line building engines, and so working on the line meant that he had to be in place for when that piece of the engine came to put that piece in there. Now, if he wasn't there, then the piece didn't get put in. And so, in order for him to step away, he had to have a fill in to step in. That even meant for the bathroom. So, to call my dad for an emergency, it better had been an emergency because he had to get somebody to fill in to even get to the phone. So this must have been deemed an emergency that I was not eating my food. And I remember my mom calling my dad, and my dad, I get on the phone and I'm all sweet. Yeah, hey, daddy, like as if this is just a general conversation of bedtime. And so my dad called me Titi. And so all he said was, Titi, you better eat that food. And I was like, okay. And that was it. Like he had a word. He just had to say the thing and I did the thing. And I had no idea I was in trouble. Like that was trouble. But dads bring that dynamic, that balance to the family and to parenting. And we can go on about stories of, you know, good cop versus bad cop with moms and dads and what that looks like. Even in today's, I watched the show The Neighborhood with Sheena Arnold and Cedric the Entertainer, and they have a differencing of approaches in raising their children, but it's in comedy and it's you can see, you know, the dynamic between a mom and a dad. But dads also bring a level of creativity to the parenting, whether it's the parenting of discipline or the parenting of getting things done um, differently than the mom. And in most cases, no way is better than the other. It's just a different perspective of parenting. So if we think back to like Cliff Huxtable, he had a whole setup of how to teach Theo responsibility by rechanging the entire Huxtable household and setting that up to be so yeah, setting up the whole Huxtable household as a hotel. Like he went to the extreme with that. But in season one, the very first episode, was attributed to my dad. It was called "It's in the Grits," and that episode was um, really talking about how if there's some things that you may need in life, and if those things are presented to you um, by face value, you might not take them. And so sometimes there has to be a level of creativity of how those things are presented to you so that you get what you need and not turn away from it. And that's what I pulled from that experience with my dad with the grits. So we have this whole debate in the world of, do you eat sugar with your grits or do you eat salt with your grits? And I'm a sugar person. I eat sugar with my grits. And the reason for that is because that's how it was presented to me. So I've acquired a taste for that. Now, my dad was the one who made my breakfast every morning before going to school when I was little. And I had grits. Now, I don't know if I had grits every single day, but I do remember having grits. And that's the only meal I actually really remember in the morning. Um, and my grits consisted of sugar and syrup. That's how my dad gave them to me. And I ate every piece of that grit or those grits, and I was good to go. It wasn't until I gotten older, and if you hadn't watched episode 1 of season 1, spoiler alert, it wasn't until I got older that my dad shared with me the trick. So I was not an egg eater. When I was little, I did not eat eggs. Like even to the event that if you were baking a cake, my godmother would be baking a cake and she'd be putting eggs in it. And my sisters, she would have to tell my sisters, get her out of here because I would be like, you putting eggs in that cake? Oh, I'm not gonna eat that cake. Um, did not understand what that meant. Like that was the baking process. I just knew I wasn't eating eggs. And so my father knew that eggs is what I needed for the protein for my day and to give me the brain food that I needed. Grits wasn't going to do it. But grits were good to me. And so he knew that if he gave me grits, I would eat them. But if he presented to me eggs, I wasn't having it. And it wasn't going to be the look or the voice that was going to get me to eat the eggs. So he hid my eggs under my grits and he smothered them with a little bit of sugar and some syrup, and I ate it. And like I said, I didn't realize, he didn't tell me that until I was like a young adult, what the trick was. And I was like, oh, that was sneaky, that was real creative. But he knew that if he gave them to me that way, I wasn't having it. And so that's that level of creativity and just really thinking outside the box and raising children. So what I want you to do right now is really join me for just a moment to take a trip down memory lane as we celebrate the quintessential dad activities from the 80s. I'm an 80s baby, born in the late 70s, but grew up in the 80s. And so I'm a Gen X tech generation. So those of you that are with me can picture this. It's a warm summer day. The smell of barbecue fills the air. The sound of music blasting, summer, summer, summertime, summertime. Um, and a dad of some form is on the grill. It's almost like an art form when you think about this day, because from perfectly marinated chicken, ribs, even mouth-watering burgers and plump hot dogs and sausages. It was a dad that knew how to turn a simple barbecue into a feast. I was at a cookout last week and I didn't know this. I was today years old when I found this out. Like, I am not a griller. Like, I'll put some hot dogs and some burgers on the grill, but I'm not grilling steak on the grill and all that. It's usually a dad that does that to make the meal great. But so I don't know the tricks of the trade to the grill. Like the George Foreman grill is probably as far as I go. Um, and so I was having a conversation with a dad at this barbecue, and he was telling me a story about another barbecue that he was at, and he said when he said he was watching another guy on the grill, like this is a game, like this is a true this is a true thing for them. But he was watching another dad on the grill, and he said when I saw him flip that burger and then flip it again, I knew them burgers weren't going to be good. Like them burgers about to be dry. Huh? I was confused. I was like, well, what made you know what the burgers were going to taste like before even tasting the burgers? He said, you only flip the burgers once. And I was like, really? I had no idea of that trick. How do you know when to flip the burger once? Apparently, some type of rule book came when they became dads on how to grill just right. But that was something like, whoa, I had no idea. I would be there flipping it and then flipping it again and cutting it open. By the time you got my burger, it was a chop burger. Open to make sure you wasn't getting raw meat inside. But my dad's signature meal, I don't ever remember my dad actually being on the grill. There was a dad on the grill, like my godfather, my cousins. My dad's signature meal was banana pudding. And um, he was like the master. Everybody wanted my dad's banana pudding. Then when he got a little older, he was trying something new one day. I remember I was pregnant with my daughter and I went visited Buffalo and I went over his house. And he's like, TT, you want some banana pudding? And I'm like, yeah, I'm pregnant too. Like, of course. And he pulled it out the fridge, but it was kind of dark on the top. Like it had been cooked. And I said, what is this? He was like, oh, I baked it in the oven. I'm like, absolutely not. Now, no shade to those who bake their banana pudding, but that is not the way that my dad did his banana pudding. And that was not something I was used to. So I'm like, don't go getting older trying something new. Stick to the same stuff. Um, and his music wasn't the traditional, or not traditional, but the 80s music of the time. My dad was I don't know if it was rock. I don't know what that is, what the genre would be. But my dad had a band and he was a musician. And he taught himself music. And so he taught himself how to play the guitar. He taught himself how to compose music, to make music on the guitar, but also to collaborate with other people and make music. So my dad had a band called Majestic Funk, and this band was your typical 70s drop, 70s style dress band. But he composed the music, and I'm not going to say he composed all the music and all the things because I wasn't there. I don't know. I wasn't in all of their sessions, so I don't know of all of the members of the band and what their contribution was, but they had a contribution because it was a locally famous band. Like their band played for the Juneteenth in Buffalo every single year at the Martin Luther King Park, and they were requested and known. And so shout outs to the Duncans because my cousin played the drums and my dad played the guitar, and they had other members of the band and other singers in the band. But my dad composed music, he wrote the lyrics, he played the guitar, and he was phenomenal. His voice is like a mix of Prince and Maxwell. He just has a smooth, methodic voice, melodic, excuse me, voice to him, and it was just so soothing. And he was a great musician and a great musical artist. He just was, phenomenal with that. And I remember many of their um, rehearsals that they would have, and they're giddy up in their gear. And in fact, I believe you'll see some pictures in this episode of the band and hear some of my dad's music for this episode. So please enjoy that. But back then, like music and fashion were huge parts of my growing up era. Like remember the colorful tracksuits, Kango hats, and the iconic Jheri curl. Now, I didn't have a Jheri curl, but I knew plenty of people did. My godfather had a Jheri curl. My dad tried to Jheri curl his hair up. He don't have the right hair for it, but I believe he tried to spray something in it to curl it up. But my dad was really, really good friends with Rick James, the late great Rick James. He was from Lackawanna, which is like 15 minutes outside of Buffalo, and the Mary Jane Girls. So in his case, he didn't really rock your tradition. Well, at one point when he was younger, he had an afro. Like I'm not even sure. Him and my mother had an afro, and their hair is like mine. So I'm not sure how they afro that out. Like, how did that work? But one particular hairstyle that was not traditional, but my dad did rock was braids and beads like Rick James. He wore that hairstyle to Darien Lake. I never forget, I have a picture of him holding a catfish that we caught at Darien Lake. And Darien Lake is a version of Six Flags amusement park. Now it is called Six Flags Darien Lake, but it is an amusement park that we went to. And he rocked those braids and those beads. And maybe he did cook that catfish on the grill, but I remember we caught that catfish. He was holding it. And at the time, nobody thought anything was wrong with wearing that hairstyle to an amusement park. But he certainly was rocking it. And I always wonder, like, who braided and beaded his hair because it was long like mine, like all the way down, looking like just like a Rick James. Um, who braided and beaded that hair? I have to ask my mom and see if she can tell me. Um, but our dads rocked these trends with confidence and style. Like nobody couldn't tell him anything different. It was just a time when fashion was bold and music had power to really bring everyone together. And in fact, it did. Anybody who is from the eras of the 70s and the 80s would know about majestic funk. It was a thing. So whether it was like a family reunion or a neighborhood cookout or the 4th of July or even the Juneteenth, these moments of connection and joy are what made our dads so special, or the fathers in our lives so special. They knew how to create lasting memories with just a grill or some music or maybe even spades or dominoes and some good old laughters. Like dads could make you laugh. Like who thinks of this nonsense that they say sometimes, even with the dad jokes? Like, who thinks of that? I'm happy for my father because, and my brothers, and my ex-husband, because they gave me a sense of male sense of humor where those types of things I get and I understand. And that's why I think that in my past life, I was the mom who told the good, bad dad jokes. But fathers aren't always just your biological dads. Like a father figure is anyone who nurtures you, provides wisdom, guidance, and love, just like Uncle Phil on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. He raised Will, and he reminded us in a particular episode that, a lot of people think that being strong means never asking for help, but it takes a strong person to admit when they need it. And that I thought of that because that spoke volumes to us moms, especially single moms. Oftentimes we don't ask for help because it makes us feel inferior, it makes us feel weak, and it makes us feel unfit. And we think that if we're asking for help for our children or we're not with our children in a moment, not every moment, but a moment, then we're looked at as being unfit. Like I could literally remember when my son was born 20 some years ago, my mom would say, like, hey, let him come over. And I literally said to her, no, like, it's not like I'm painting a house. I don't need a babysitter. That was the dumbest thing. But I literally thought that if I wasn't doing something that he couldn't do, then he didn't need to be somewhere else, or my children didn't need to go somewhere else. I had a fear that if I asked for a sitter or if my kids weren't with me at a time, someone saw me, like, where's your kids? I'm like, oh, I had to have this great excuse of why they couldn't be with me, that people would think that I was unfit. And that's not the case. It takes that whole saying, it takes a village to raise a child. That is so true. So whether it's a two-parent household or if it's a split household or the dads are not involved for whatever reason, they're absent, it takes a village. And so really fostering those relationships with other male figures in your life, your uncles, your brothers, your father, your own father, and things of that nature, to help bring that puzzle piece to the table is just is needed. And it does help to build that community and foster that sense of foster that thriving, not really foster, but helps to help your children to thrive because they have the things, they're getting the things that they need in certain aspects. So I remember um, a particular time, I remember the pandemic, not even a particular time, because the pandemic is a time. It's an error, ERROR, in our life. But during that time, I took quarantining seriously. Like I was truly gun ho to the whole fact of nobody could come to my house and we were not going anywhere. I was fearful that something could happen. It was just me and my daughter. And I thought that if we went to someone's house, we could catch COVID, and I was going to be on a ventilator, and my daughter wasn't going to be able to see me, and how was she going to be taken care of, or vice versa, and one of us would die alone. Like, that was, I was just so fearful of that. And so my one particular friend, we would always talk on Zoom, and she is one that is really involved in my daughter's life and helps with taking care of her. My daughter just loves her. And so we would be on Zoom, and she would do things like call on Zoom, and I would be able to go and take a shower, or just step away for seconds and cook, so that she would keep her occupied. And side note, that's utilizing this technology is a creative way to be present if you are not physically present. That's for a mom or a dad, on how can you be visibly present. It's one thing to call, but it's another thing to be visual. And so utilizing this technology, Zoom, FaceTime, WhatsApp, whatever, Facebook Messenger, however you have to do it. But she would call and she would be like, hey, how about I come get her, and I will wear my mask, and she can just play outside in the front yard so you can get a break. And I was like, no. I was upset that she was even making that suggestion, that I felt like she didn't understand the severity of it and how serious this was. And she kept pushing and kept pushing, to the point she pushed me away, and we fell out and we didn't talk for a while. Um, and stress makes you stupid, because that was a very stressful time. Fast forward to 2023, she brings it up, and we're cracking up because she's telling me all the things I was saying, and I'm like dying laughing, because it sounded so unreasonable and irrational on my part. And I was like, I can't believe I said that. Like, I was like, absolutely not, to the point where I was like, are those options available now? Because you can take her right now to your house, mask or no mask, front yard, backyard, in the house. But it was so crazy. Like, she was like, I would just watch you on Zoom. And it was like watching 90 Days In, like, you were losing it. Um, but having that community is important. I remember after the pandemic, a family member of mine recognized the need and called me and said, hey, my husband and I are going to come and get your daughter and give you a break. And I didn't ask for it. I didn't even know I needed it at that moment. But when I got it, I realized I needed it. And they came and got her in the afternoon and kept her all through dinner time, fed her. Then when she got home, I just had to bathe her, do our nightly prayer routine, and put her to bed. But I say that to say that sometimes when we think about, like what Uncle Phil told Fresh Prince, like, being strong never means that you don't ask for help. But a strong person admits that they need it. When you're doing the thing, sometimes you don't even realize that you need help doing the thing, because you're just so used to doing it. So sometimes it takes another person to say, hey, I got something that can help you do the thing. And you're like, oh, I didn't realize I needed that help. And in season 1, I also had an episode that talked about giving space, and it spoke more about the both sides of the coin. If you are the person giving the help, or you're the person asking or needing the help, being able to give space on both sides. So the person asking for help, giving the person that you're asking for help of space to be able to say, nope, I'm not willing to step into that role or provide that. Or, hey, I can certainly do that. Or even, oh, that's all you need, but I got all of this and I can do much more than that. And then vice versa, the person who can provide the support, giving the person who needs the support space. So allowing them the environment to ask for the help that they need, and sometimes even just speaking up and offering help as you see fit for that. Because like I said, it truly, truly does take a community in doing that. Well, as we start to just like really come to an end to this episode, I want to take a moment to really honor all of the incredible dads, and those who are actually father figures out there. Your jokes, your wisdom, and your ability to create unforgettable moments are what make you truly, truly special. So I want to thank all of the dads that I've come encounter with for your laughter, your lessons, and your love. Remember, dads, the legacy of our fathers lives on the wisdom that you share and the memories that are created with you. So let's continue to celebrate dads and father figures in our lives, not just on Father's Day or in the month of June, but every day. Also, remember that you are needed and your presence is valuable. God gave you those children for a reason, You need them just as much as they need you. So until next time, stay empowered, stay inspired, and keep thriving. And in the words of Russell Simmons, God bless you and good night.